Hello and welcome to this FPL Template Team video with me, Holly Shand. In this video, I'm going to go through the template squad of the highest owned players in FPL ahead of the 22-23 season and put them into affordable 11 and bench players. If you haven't joined my mini league yet, it is on the screen now, all the details, and if you are new around here, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. Starting off at the back then, and the most owned goalkeeper in the game right now is Edouard Mendy. He's in around 25% of teams, and I can see why he's popular. He's had a price decrease of 1 million from last season, which came as a surprise, given that Chelsea were one of the top ranked teams in the Premier League defensively last season. We did see price decreases across the board for goalkeepers, but you look at the likes of Alisson, Edison and Lloris, they only dropped from 6 to 5.5. Mendy is the next tier down at 5 million, even though Spurs and Chelsea kept the same number of clean sheets last season. Now, one reason for that must be because Chelsea have had some key absentees, players that have departed in a transfer window, including Rudiger and Christensen, but they have already strengthened their defence since then. So I can see plenty of clean sheet potential from Chelsea for their opening fixtures. And in terms of the premium goalkeepers from the top 6 clubs, only Alisson had a better save percentage rate than Mendy last season. Just a note on backup goalkeepers, the most popular 4 million goalkeeper in the game right now is Fraser Forster, who is back up at Spurs, but I don't think we need to pay too much attention. It's actually better in FPL to choose a backup goalkeeper, your 4 million goalkeeper, as a player with low ownership, because it's less likely that they'll see a price drop in the early weeks of the season. Looking to our fantasy defences, and there is a clear formation emerging in our 11 and also a clear favourite back four to consider. It's going to be a 4-4-2 formation, this template 11, and in terms of the back four right now, Trent Alexander-Arnold, João Cancelo, Reece James and Ivan Perisic. Now, Trent is in around 55% of teams at the moment, and that is well justified. I was expecting a price rise for him last season. He started last season at 7.5 million, rose to 8.4 by the end of the season, back at 7.5 this season, which is bizarre given that he managed over 200 points last season, 14 offensive returns, which is really impressive from him, and he also created more chances than any other player in the Premier League last campaign. Looking elsewhere then, João Cancelo is the next most owned player in the defence in around 45% of teams at the time of recording. Another player who is a very solid fantasy asset. He managed 12 attacking returns last season, and he actually played more minutes of any outfield Manchester City player than anyone else. So it shows you how much Pep Guardiola likes to play him in his 11s, how he can recover quickly and play lots of games in quick succession. No Pep roulette here for Cancelo, which makes him a really attractive option. He has gone up in price by a whole million from last season, but I think that increase is well justified. Next, further down the list, we've got Reece James, only a little bit less owned than Cancelo, still in nearly 45% of teams. Now, the thing is with Reece James, last season he was equal on attacking returns with both Robertson and Trent having played significantly less minutes. I think he played a third less minutes than the Liverpool fullback. So if he can string together a full season and get more minutes under Tuchel, avoid the injuries, then he could be on for a phenomenal fantasy season. He was the top goal scorer among defenders last season. Now, the final player in the template 11 at the back is Spurs' new signing, Ivan Perisic. We've seen him play as a winger in the past. Antonio Conte into Milan a couple of seasons ago turned him into a left wing back. He's in around 42.5% of teams at the moment, so another really popular asset. There is a little bit of concern. He's not been involved in too much pre-season training and matches at the moment. I think he's nursing a little bit of a calf injury, so that's something to keep an eye on. But to have him listed as a defender at just 5.5 million, he could be an absolute fantasy gem. We know how well the wing backs perform under Conte in his system, and we know that Perisic is one of the best in the world in this position. So hopefully you can get the minutes, not too many substitutions before the 60-minute marks. We need to think of him as a midfielder in terms of the attacking returns he can provide, and the clean sheets are just a bonus. Looking towards midfielders then, and it was at this point where I had to be a little bit selective with the budget. Mo Salah is the first name in this four-man midfield. Then we've got Luis Diaz. No place for Heung-min Son, purely because it would have priced the whole template 11 out of budget if we'd have gone for Son. So Pedro Neto and Bruno Guimaraes make up the final two spaces in this four-man midfield. Mo Salah, the second highest owned player in the game right now, in just under 60% of teams. I find it crazy to think that 42% of the managers, I think, that we're getting up to 3 million players now. You're going to have nearly a third of them without Mo Salah in their teams. 1 million managers already thinking they're not going with Salah. Just seems crazy. He's been the best goal scorer in the Premier League over the course of the last 5 seasons. 3 golden boots in there. There's no reason to suggest he can't keep that up this season. And you look at his underlying numbers from last season as well in terms of shots on target and big chances. He was by far and away the best player in the Premier League. He's getting a full pre-season as well. We saw him start last season really strongly. Then he tailed off a little bit. He played a lot of minutes across all competitions for club and country. It did catch up with him towards the back end of last season, but having rested all summer, got that new contract for Liverpool, I think he can really hit the ground running again in this campaign. And looking at Liverpool's fixtures, you could easily captain him across the opening 6 or 7 fixtures. He's joined by Luis Diaz, who's in around 30% of teams at the moment. He does look like a bargain at 8 million. I personally prefer Robertson in the Liverpool triple up with Salah and Trent. But, Diaz, he is in Jurgen Klopp's favoured front three. We saw him get minutes in the Champions League, semi-finals and finals, which just shows how much Klopp trusts him. And the fact that the other Liverpool attackers have come in listed as forwards, the likes of Firmino, Nunes and Jota, it does just show you Diaz coming in cheaper and in that midfield role, he could be a fancy gem. And if you compare him with, Sadio Mane will, we can compare those two players and potentially having a similar output. We're used to Mane being well over 10 million. So I think that's why Diaz is so popular at 8 million. Personally, though, I think in terms of points per game, I do think Robertson is the better asset to own right now. So obviously no Son in here. Next, we've got Pedro Neto in around 20% of teams at the moment. He's been punned as the bargain of the season. I think there are a few concerns in there in terms of his attacking output. We saw him get 13 attacking returns 2 seasons ago before succumbing to a big knee injury. So obviously, if he can return to that form, he's had a $1 million price drop this season. He could be a potential bargain, but the trouble in there is, can he return to those levels? It's not going to be easy, but the fixtures are good for Wolves from the start. So, he is a player you can take a punt on. Now, the final man in this 4-man midfield is Newcastle United's Bruno Guimaraes. I'm a little bit surprised by this one, if I'm honest, having seen him increase in price quite quickly from last season, up a full $1 million. 5 goals and 1 assist. I think a couple of those came, in a cluster of games towards the end of last season. So he did have a little bit of a different role under Eddie Howe towards the tail end of last season. So that's why he's had the price hike. I do think he's going to struggle to provide value at 6 million. But, Newcastle United are one of the big up-and-coming teams in the Premier League this season. There's bags of potential from them in terms of goals and clean sheets for their fantasy assets. So he could be worth a punt. Now we've got 2 strikers in this formation for the template 11, and Erling Haaland has just had phenomenal ownership ever since the game went live. He's the most owned player in the game in over 60% of squads. It actually scares me as someone who wants to go KDB over Haaland every time I log in that Premier League website and see his ownership creeping up. It is well justified. He is a world-class player, and he's popular because, he's the new shiny asset in the Premier League this season that everyone wants to own in FPL, because why not? Why would you not want a world-class player in your FPL team? I'm a little bit more conservative. I do feel like it can take most players quite a while to settle into Premier League life. It's a lot more demanding than the Bundesliga. We've spoken about the Bundesliga tax in the past, so you know, if he can emulate his form in the Bundesliga, there's no doubt he's going to be a fantastic fantasy option all season. But I'd just like to give him a little bit of time first to see how he settles down. He's a player that's quite prone to injury as well, which is a bit of a worry, but he does have the advantage of not going to the World Cup. But certainly, if you want a risk-free start to this Premier League season, get Haaland in your team because he is a massive piece of the template. The other forward who's really popular right now in over 50% of teams, the third highest owned player in the game behind Haaland and Salah, is Arsenal's Gabriel Jesus. Obviously a new role for him this season at Arsenal, which is probably why we've seen him popular, and we know what he's capable of producing. He's had a couple of Premier League seasons where he's scored over 10 goals, admittedly from, you know, not a lot of minutes. He's struggled to get over 2,000 minutes in his last 5 seasons in the Premier League, so you just think if he can get those minutes and be the certain starter under Mikel Arteta as the Arsenal number 9, potential to be on penalties as well, then he could really fly this season. And you know, another reason why he's popular is because Arsenal have a great run of opening fixtures, and we've struggled over the last few seasons to find forwards for our forward lines. You know, we're seeing the emergence of the fullbacks and midfielders really delivering. It's slim pickings on the forward, so he's as good as any pick to take a punt on at the start of the season, because it's good to have 2 strikers rather than just one at the start of the season, because things can quickly unravel if you do pick up an injury somewhere. Now, to afford this team then, we need a budget option in each position to fill our benches. Sam Greenwood at Leeds United is the go-to cheap bench filler forward at £4.5 million right now. He did get a few starts and a few substitute appearances last season, and you know, with Bamford we don't know the situation of whether he's going to be fully fit for the start of this season. If he isn't, then that could leave a little bit of an opening for Greenwood for at least some substitute minutes. Other players that have played their way into our fantasy teams after getting transfers: Andreas Pereira has moved from Manchester United to Fulham. Neco Williams has moved from Liverpool to Nottingham Forest. 4.5 and 4 million respectively. They seem to be the go-to midfielder and defender right now because they're priced to be at the team they were previously with, not starting, and now they're going to be, you know, regulars in their starting 11s, and they do have attacking output. They could be really great options. What I would like to know from you guys then is how many of this template 11 have you currently got in your FPL team to start the season with? I want to see the template rating out of 15. I suspect there'll be quite a few of you that have maybe got 10 or more, so it's certainly going to be an interesting start to the season. Don't be scared though about going with the template players. The template is a template for a reason, because they are the best priced players at each price point and the most sensible formation for the start of the season as well. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back very soon with another video. Bye for now.